And now I'll introduce our next speaker, Tayra Lanuza Navarro. Tayra is at this moment a postdoctoral researcher at the ERC funded project Early Modern Cosmology, Institutions, Metaphysics, in the Foscari University of Venice. She has been studied mainly, history, astrology in the context of history of science in the early modern period. And she has been working a lot with the sources on the Iberian Peninsula, namely the Spanish sources. So Tayra, please, you may start.
Thank you very much, Luis, and thank you for organizing this workshop. I'm going to share my screen. It's just a couple of images to show my examples. There. So I'm going to speak about the special case, or not that special, of the Spanish Inquisition, and also a bit on terminology, on the uses of the terms natural astrology and judicial astrology. So I thank the previous speakers, Professor Rochberg and Dorian, for their perfect previous talks introducing the issues. So, when the physician of a small town in Cuenca in central Spain was denounced to the Inquisition in 1692 for being an astrologer, the Inquisitor consulted 5 experts who had astrological knowledge about his case. They were asked to evaluate the physician's astrological practice and tell the inquisitors how it should be classified, whether as natural astrology and thus licit, or as judicial astrology and thus forbidden. This was not an exception in the usual course of action of the Inquisition regarding trials related to astrology. The Inquisition consulted astrological experts regularly when someone was accused of practicing astrology. In the trials, the experts were to assess the activities of the person accused and to explain if those activities were forbidden astrological practices. They were also asked to evaluate the books and documents belonging to those being prosecuted, which were usually collected and confiscated when people were arrested by inquisitorial officers. Having a clear definition of the distinction between natural and judicial astrology was therefore a crucial issue. Natural and judicial astrology are categories that belong both to the historical actors and to current historians. They have become historiographical tools and characterize studies on early modern astrology. But the sources suggest in many cases, and specifically in inquisitorial sources, that despite the distinction in the Papal Bull of 1586, the Inquisition's indexes, the recourse to Thomas Aquinas, etc., definitions of what was natural and what not were not just varied, but had different meanings in different contexts. I would like to share briefly today a few examples illustrating this of inquisitorial trials in Spain. In the previously mentioned case of the physician Isidro Gil, which you have in the screen, as well as in that of another physician, Francisco Martinez, both prosecuted in Cuenca in the 1690s, the main theme emerging from the sources is discrepancy. The experts disagreed about how to characterize the defendant's astrological activities. The reports show that personal opinions and interpretations of rules and of the bull, Coeliat Terrae, could lead to different trial outcomes. 3 experts were asked to judge the activities of this defendant, Gil, as they were described by witnesses, as well as his own response to the accusations. The first consultant, a Trinitarian friar, concluded that the defendant had not committed any crime with his practice of astrology. The 2 Franciscan friars who were also consulted dissented, they were certain that Gil had engaged in superstitious divination and said that according to Sixtus V bull, he should be condemned by the Inquisition. Differing interpretations of the bull could make a huge difference in the consultants' opinions. Because of these dissimilar opinions, the inquisitors decided to consult two more experts in this case, two Dominican friars. They agreed with the Franciscans and asserted that Gil's activities should be classified as judicial astrology, not natural astrology, as the Trinitarian had said, and therefore were forbidden practices and subject to prosecution. A similar disagreement happened among the experts consulted in the case of another physician, Francisco Martinez, also in the court of Cuenca in 1693. 7 experts were asked their opinion about his practices. They all concurred that predicting the location of stolen items was a forbidden and superstitious practice, falling under the category of judicial astrology. However, when they had to judge the natal chart that the defendant had made, they disagreed. 4 of them saw the practice as judicial and were sure that it was forbidden by the papal bull. The other 3 concluded that, as they were figures consulted to know about the outcome of an illness, it was an allowed practice, as astrological medicine was, as is known, one of the parts of the discipline considered natural astrology, allowed indeed by the 9th rule of the Inquisition as well as by Sixtus V bull. These cases again show that the difference between permitted and forbidden practices was not always clear. Some advisors of the Inquisition accepted natal charts when their objective was to predict the course of an illness. Other advisors accepted them more widely, also considering natal charts in general as natural astrology, when their interpretation depended on humoral constitution, influenced by the heavens, and spoke only about personal complexion and temperaments, or general accounts of the physical and moral characteristics of the person. I'm going to use another example of disagreement about this issue, which is the trial of the Italian Giacomo Bramoselli in 1660. This one was not in Cuenca, but in Barcelona. In Toledo, and featured this critical debate about what was natural and what was judicial astrology. This trial involved examination of practices related to magic and superstition, as well as fraud. The trial lasted from 1660 to 1663, with several declarations of the defendant. At a certain point, a member of the Inquisition wrote a summary of Bramoselli's statement, and his opinion was that everything Bramoselli said was, as you can read, this is the opinion of the previous calificador. This is the one. Everything Bramoselli says is of judiciary nature, and even if there are very good doctrines in medicine that could be allowed, they are still mixed with judicial things in a way that they become infected and condemned. So the opinion of this inquisitor, the prosecutor, reflects the difficulty that historical non-specialists, agents in astrology, found in discerning natural astrology from judicial practices, and shows the consequent positions of some inquisitors before the discipline. The boundaries between useful medical astrology and superstitious condemned astrology were too diffuse. All aspects of astrology mixed and became indiscernible. Several experts, including 2 Jesuits, a Trinitarian and a Franciscan, were asked not only as theologians but also as astrological experts to examine this defendant documents, Bramoselli's. The personal opinion of one of the Jesuit examiners, Baptista Davila, this one here, was that the Inquisition should not worry about distinguishing between natural and judicial practices. This is what he wrote. Even if astrological medicine was acceptable, he considered that the effort needed to establish the distinction between natural medical astrology and judicial astrology in each case was not worth it. His advice to the Inquisition was to ignore the parts of astrology which could be useful for their medical interests, to not invest time and resources in trying to find out if it was natural or judiciary astrology, what was contained in each written work and their evaluation. His opinion was that every astrological activity should be condemned, even if not all of it was non-natural. The defenders of the discipline argued that this was precisely the reason why astrologers alone, or perhaps together with theologians, should be consulted. Theologians, they argued, could not differentiate between natural astrological knowledge based on physical causes and those based on divination. They simply condemned them all. Several reports by experts in astrology consulted by the Inquisition in earlier periods expressed the same concern. The Inquisition asked Fernando de Vera, the bishop of the city of Bujía, to write a report on astrology in 1622, because he knows about this science and is a very good theologian and calificador. Calificador were the evaluators consulted by the Inquisition, the experts. Vera criticized the members of the Inquisition who had not studied astrology and still condemned it despite their lack of knowledge. He explained that natal charts should not be considered illicit, I quote, if interpreted the way Thomas Aquinas taught. Then judicial astrology concerning nativities is not bad. Therefore, it is not forbidden by Sixtus V motu proprio, he wrote. Unquote. These and other early modern sources suggest that the division between natural and judiciary astrology was a thin line frequently redefined according to the practitioners or the experts' opinion and context. Thus, assuming that the use of the terms natural and judicial astrology by the historical actors implies they carry the same meaning in every case might not always be of help in understanding discussions of astrology's legitimacy in the early modern period. The general definitions of natural astrology in the works and the shared traits of the arguments about natural and judicial astrology, of the debates about astrology happening all over Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries, are undeniable, and many have a previous tradition. But I would like to reflect on the fact that focusing on them, on the shared traits, can sometimes obscure the diversity created by regional and vernacular and even personal intellectual circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tayra. Again, a complex topic that has haunted how to classify astrology, the natural and the judicial. And I think you raised very good points in how muddled and how that point can be seen in several ways. Thank you.
Let me find the share screen button, if I can. Oops. Okay. Has it stopped?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
It has, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so